Look at the global development of frontier AI models. These are the massive, cutting-edge systems like GPT-4 or Claude that push the boundaries of machine learning capabilities. They are expanding across borders at a speed that traditional legal systems simply cannot match. This creates a severe tension for United States lawmakers. They face a dual mandate. They want to ensure absolute American dominance in the global AI market, but they also have to protect their own citizens from the novel harms these technologies introduce. To resolve that tension, a new legislative blueprint has been proposed. It is called the National Policy Framework for Artificial Intelligence. This document is not a finalized, passable bill. It is a set of explicit instructions directed at Congress, tech policy professionals, and industry strategists to guide how all future AI laws should be written. The framework offers a highly specific solution to the dual mandate. Instead of creating a massive new regulatory agency to oversee artificial intelligence, it relies on a legal architecture known as deregulation via preemption. To understand how the United States actually plans to win the AI race, we have to look past the surface-level bullet points. We need to deconstruct this document as a three-tiered legal strategy. On a first read, the framework's 7 sections can feel entirely disconnected. It jumps from rules about child psychology and social media algorithms straight into federal permitting for electrical grids. But if we construct the logic of the document from the ground up, a clear structure emerges. We can build this policy stack one layer at a time. We will assemble 3 distinct levels: the micro level, which focuses on individual guardrails, the macro level, focused on physical infrastructure, and a constitutional capstone that dictates jurisdictional authority. Building the framework this way reveals its operational design. It establishes highly visible protections for individual citizens at the base, while aggressively shielding AI corporations from liability at the top. We start at the base layer. Sections 1, 3, and 4 of the framework deal directly with personal harms and content generation. For child safety, the text instructs Congress to mandate commercially reasonable, privacy-protective age assurance requirements. This means platforms likely to be accessed by minors would need mechanisms like parental attestation to verify a user's age before granting access. To address the specific threat of deepfake abuse, the framework points directly to past political precedent, explicitly citing the Trump administration's support for the Take It Down Act to protect both children and adults. On intellectual property, the framework takes a firm stance. Training AI models on copyrighted material does not violate copyright laws. Knowing this will cause friction with publishers, it instructs Congress to step back, deferring the issue of fair use completely to the judicial branch. The only intellectual property protection it actively requests from Congress is a federal rule against the unauthorized commercial use of a person's digital replica, their physical likeness or voice. Even then, it demands strict First Amendment exceptions for parody, satire, and news reporting. That focus on speech continues into Section 4, which strictly prohibits the United States government from coercing technology providers to alter or ban AI-generated content based on partisan or ideological agendas. This base layer is highly targeted. It offers specific, defined protections for children and individuals, while explicitly warning Congress to avoid setting ambiguous standards or open-ended liabilities that could drag AI developers into endless litigation. With the digital content rules established, the middle tier shifts to the physical reality of AI, raw compute power, and the massive energy required to run it. Training and operating frontier models requires enormous data centers. The framework notes that these facilities will draw massive amounts of electricity, but insists residential ratepayers cannot be forced to absorb the increased costs. To solve this energy bottleneck, the document proposes streamlined permits for behind-the-meter power. Data centers would draw power directly from isolated on-site energy sources, bypassing the public grid. Generating on-site power lets AI companies scale infrastructure rapidly without waiting for public grid upgrades. To ensure this isn't slowed by bureaucracy, the framework delivers a critical rule. Congress must not create any new federal agency to regulate AI. Instead of a centralized watchdog, the policy relies on pre-existing regulatory bodies using their specific subject matter expertise, while creating regulatory sandboxes to allow companies to test applications with minimal friction. Even labor market disruptions are handled with a light touch. Section 6 addresses workforce adaptation entirely through non-regulatory methods, like integrating AI skills into existing apprenticeship programs rather than imposing rigid labor mandates. This middle layer stops treating AI like a software category. It treats it as heavy industry, requiring aggressive physical deregulation and decentralized oversight to maintain an edge over global competitors. Guardrails for individuals and streamlined permits for infrastructure mean very little without a mechanism to enforce them nationwide. That brings us to the macro level of the policy stack, jurisdictional authority. Section 7 introduces the capstone, federal preemption, where a higher government eliminates a lower government's regulatory power. This map illustrates the threat, a fragmented landscape of 50 overlapping state AI laws, creating enormous compliance burdens. The framework instructs Congress to explicitly override those state laws, erasing the patchwork borders and creating a single, frictionless national standard. The justification for stripping states of this power is straightforward. The document argues that AI development is an inherently interstate phenomenon, with deep foreign policy and national security implications, placing it strictly under federal jurisdiction. To secure this protection, the document demands an explicit prohibition. Individual states would not be permitted to penalize AI developers for unlawful conduct committed by a third-party user who happens to be utilizing their models. The federal shield does have intentional carve-outs. States would retain their traditional police powers to enforce general, pre-existing laws against fraud and consumer abuse, and crucially, it protects state zoning laws. Leaving zoning authority at the local level is exactly what allows the physical construction of those off-the-grid data centers we saw in Layer 2. Federal preemption is the true engine of this framework. It builds a legal barricade around AI developers, protecting them from thousands of local liabilities so they can scale their operations across the entire country without interruption. Looking at the fully assembled policy stack, the interaction between these three layers forms a highly deliberate national strategy. The framework combines two incredibly powerful directives. It preempts state regulators from governing AI, while simultaneously refusing to create a new federal regulator to take their place. By stripping regulatory authority from the states and intentionally leaving a void at the federal level, the structural reality of this blueprint is sweeping, unified deregulation. This approach aligns perfectly with broader executive branch philosophies that view aggressive federal bureaucracy as a direct hindrance to technological and economic growth. However, this strategy carries massive external dependencies. Because the framework actively punts the intellectual property debate, the entire generative AI industry is now operating at the mercy of upcoming judicial rulings on copyright and fair use. Second, the framework assumes that private companies actually possess the capital, material, and logistical capability to build massive, independent energy grids behind the meter. The proposed national policy framework functions as a massive legislative wager on the future of physical infrastructure and legal liability. It bets everything on a single defining premise. In a global technological arms race, the only viable way for the United States to secure dominance is to systematically remove the legal and bureaucratic friction standing in the way of the developers.